before we proceed on to do the podcast, I like to usually do tell my guests about a brief overview of how the podcast is gonna be like, right? Because you kind of answered that right as well, right? On the DM.
Okay.
Yeah. So the thing is this. I like to go on to be super brutal honest. Things may get super personal, and I may get interruptive, that kind of a stuff. I hope you're fine.
Okay.
Okay. And let me see. Yeah, it's I like to jump into experiences. So the format of the sequence of the whole podcast is at the start I'll ask you for an overview of like what is in your world, who are you, and what you're about, that kind of a
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, that's
Cool.
awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. And what I like to jump into is quite a recent format that I actually put up. It's my podcast series is called Your Journey. So I like to jump into your experiences. So before we actually do that, I usually like to know your Mondays to your Sundays, that what you actually do currently. Yeah, that what you actually do. So I like to be vulnerable with you as well. Like I like to share with you before I actually go on to the podcast to let you share yours, because it's our first time talking, that kind of a thing, and it may be awkward or what so not, Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I like to be vulnerable with you. So I'm currently 22. I'm Jack, and in Singapore it's compulsory for people to serve the army when for 2 years. So I'm currently serving the army,
Nice.
and
Nice.
yeah, and I'm usually free during the weekends, that kind of a thing. But I'm on off, I'm taking a leave, that kind of thing, and yeah, so I my Monday to Sunday, ideally, and during my offs or what so not, is that during the start of my day, I usually will like to I watch Gary V. Do you watch Gary V?
Yeah. 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 Of course.
Awesome. So yeah, I consume his content for 2 hours, at the start of the day, because I feel like I need to gain some knowledge, that kind of thing. I just started watching him 2019 March, or yeah, a couple of months
Nice.
back.
Nice.
Yeah. So so that's my first 2 hours, and then I kind of want to roll with podcasts. It's a quite
Mhm.
a recent thing. Like 1 to 2 months back that I started it, and 9 months back I started vlogging. And
Mhm.
yeah, so it came to the point that whereby I think that podcast is a great idea, and yeah, so podcast throughout the day, and yeah, and I play e-games as well. Yeah, so esports. Do you know
Mhm.
esports?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just kind of casually play some e-games, that kind of thing, and yeah, that's pretty much my life. Yeah. So
Yeah. It's cool,
that's
bro.
that's pretty much something like this that I like to jump into during the podcast, which is the practical things that you kind of do, and I like to the next sequence is that I like to jump into your timeline, because I
Okay.
believe that every single one is a byproduct of yourself, based on the stacking moments of the things that actually happen to you to make the person that you are today, that which makes you the person that you kind of have your Mondays to the Sundays. So my experiences is that when I was way younger, I feel like I'm stuck in a delusional framework. People took really great care of me, that kind of a thing, and until like I was 12 when my father actually passed away, and I
Oh man.
started, yeah, it's like my biggest pillar in my life just fell off. It's not really like that's the biggest thing that actually causes me to crumble, because after that age somehow I face like the reality, I face real stuff. It almost, because I always been stuck on a delusional framework whereby everyone treated me like a little brother, that kind of a thing, and that it's so hard for me to deal with real stuff after my father passed away. Where after the 12, I go to middle school, high school, that kind of thing. Like it's just so hard, it's like real stuff happening, judgment,
Yeah.
opinions, that kind, the human aspects, all kinds of the things. That it was really hard for me to overcome those until like very recently I went into like this self-awareness mode because I watched Gary V, that kind of thing, which leads me to this podcast itself. Yeah, so
Nice.
that's a very brief of the thing that about my life. I like to be vulnerable with you. I like brutal honesty, and that's how I like my podcast to be like. So I hope that you are fine with sharing yours as well. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, man.
Awesome. So that's the sequence. At the start is the brief introduction. I'll lead you, I'll try to lead you along the way during the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, brief overview and your Monday to your Sundays and your timeline. And I like to and at one point I did told you that I will be highly interruptive, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
during your timeline I may cut you off, and I would like to ask some questions because I like to go
Sure,
to the
sure.
thing, go deep, and then afterwards I like to resume your story, and then I'll cut you and resume, and we see how we go along from there. Yeah, because that's my format of doing this podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool.
Awesome. So we like to jump into the podcast. Before anything from your side that you like to say before we go on to the podcast?